Well, let me say I'm not against the vendors in the holiday market. The issue is connected to the lawsuit that I and other artists filed earlier this year against the revised Parks Department rules for artists. For decades, artists have been able to sell in any New York City park based on the First Amendment. Back in 2001, I won a lawsuit, Lederman et al. V. Giuliani, which struck down the permit requirement for artists in parks. The recent rule revision that the Parks Department did completely banned artists from the South Plaza of Union Square Park on the premise that it was causing intense pedestrian congestion, public safety problems, and that it was aesthetically damaging the park. As soon as they got the artists out of there, they put in a giant tent with 200 commercial vendors selling material, most of which it's illegal to sell in a park, material that's not protected by the First Amendment. So from our point of view, that holiday market graphically proves the hypocrisy that's behind these revised park rules.
The Parks Commissioner, Adrian Benepe, admitted to the Daily News that the holiday market receiving special treatment is because of the $1 million that they pay to the city for using the public land. What's wrong with that?
Well, again, the premise that the city used to justify restricting artists' First Amendment rights in a public park was that it was unsafe. That's the only way you could possibly reduce First Amendment rights, is to prove somehow or to demonstrate that it's unsafe to do it. By putting in a gigantic holiday market that's hundreds of times more damaging to the park than street artists could ever be, they've proven that it was a false premise that they passed these rules under, and therefore we feel confident that the courts will strike down these rules. In other words, if it's a public safety hazard, it doesn't matter whether you're there for free or you paid $1 million. Public safety hazard is a public safety hazard, and no rational person is going to argue that it's okay to create a severe public safety hazard in a park because somebody gave you $1 million. That's the point. That holiday market completely blocks what the city calls the second busiest subway station in the whole city. That's the 14th Street Station entrance that's located right in the middle of the park. It's totally surrounded by tents. It's completely obstructed. Sure, people that live in the city remember where it is, but the millions of tourists that come through that park, they don't remember where the subway is. They have to actually look. They can't find it.
So what's the difference, or is there a difference with the farmers market and the holiday market and what they do compared to the artists selling?
Well, there is no difference really between the holiday market and the farmers market. The farmers market, again, there's no constitutional right to sell vegetables in a public park. I buy from the farmers market. I think it's a great thing, but it isn't a right. It is a constitutional right for anybody in America, not just American citizens. Anyone in America can use public parks for communication and expression. That's a settled matter of law. I won 7 different federal lawsuits about it over the past 17 years. So if you're going to claim that an artist with a little tiny stand is a public safety hazard, but 200 vegetable, cheese, and wine vendors with stands that are 10, 20, 30 times the size of a single legal artist display are not a public safety hazard, then you're proving, again, our point that the purpose of the rules was a deceptive one, that the city lied not only to New Yorkers, but now they've lied to a federal judge and a state judge in sworn papers that they've filed in these cases, in which they claimed they had to get rid of the artists because they were a public safety hazard and they were damaging the aesthetic look of the parks. Well, I love vegetables, but 200 vegetable stands causes a lot more aesthetic blight on that park, not to mention that they have 100 trucks parked inside the park. That is a lot worse to anybody than a handful of artist stands. So likewise with the holiday market, and by the way, there's more than one holiday market. If you go to Columbus Circle, they have an equivalent holiday market to the one in Union Square, another 200 vendors. In that case, the city only allows 8 artists to sell in the same space that they are allowing 200 vendors to sell in Columbus Circle. And in Union Square Park, they don't allow even one artist to sell in the giant empty South Plaza of that park, but they put 200 commercial vendors there instead. So it seems to me, anybody looking at this, even if they're the biggest advocate for holiday markets, even if they think the Parks Department is great, even if they think they have a right to charge money, they're going to look at this situation and say, this doesn't add up. The Parks Department was lying, and therefore the park rules are invalid.
Do you plan to take any action to equalize the treatment between the holiday market and the artists?
Well, again, I filed a lawsuit in July against the park rules. Other artists have since filed 2 other lawsuits. So there's now at least 3 state and federal court lawsuits pending against the park rules. That's the action we're taking. If the judge or appeals court strikes down the park rules, we'll revert to the complete First Amendment rights that we had already won in previous lawsuits. I'm not trying to get rid of holiday markets, and I'm certainly not trying to get rid of the green market. What I'm trying to get rid of is the absurdly written park rules for artists. They're clearly discriminating against artists, discriminating against the First Amendment, and discriminating against the entire public's right to free speech. Just consider this. If I go into the park, let's say I go to Union Square Park later today and set up my stand, I'll be there for a few hours. I'm only allowed to take up 8 feet of space. That holiday market is there for over a month at a time, 24 hours a day. It is totally denying the public, forget artists, it's denying the public the use of their public park. There's no reason for that holiday market to be there other than making money for the 14th Street bid, which gets most of the money for it. There's no lack of stores in the Union Square area. It's the most upscale part of the whole city at this point. So it's not like there was a shortage of gift items to buy. There was, when the green market first located there, a shortage of places to buy organic vegetables. That's no longer the case. You have Trader Joe's and Whole Foods right across the street, where you can literally get any organic product you could imagine. But the green market does serve a purpose, and it is a benefit to the public, and we're not trying to get rid of it at all. I don't think really holiday markets belong in these small parks. If the city wants to have a holiday market, there are hundreds, probably thousands of empty lots all over the city where you could actually bring some economic benefit to neighborhoods where maybe they don't have hundreds of gift shops. But certainly that part of the city, there's no rational purpose for having the holiday market there. None.